Critics say Shedeur Sanders doesn't belong in the NFL, that he's only here because of his last name. After his rough debut they had ammo. But Kevin Stefanski pushed back. Art. Despite the numbers, despite the narrative, Stefanski not only defended Shedeur. He made it clear that the rookie would start the next game. The message was unmistakable. This wasn't about public perception, this was about what the coaches actually saw. And it challenged everything fans thought they knew about Shedeur.
If you're into the real story and all the messy twists they don't show on highlight reels, go ahead and subscribe. And if you're sticking around to see how this Browns QB chaos plays out, you should definitely be subscribed.
What they saw wasn't a flawless quarterback, but a young player dropped into the fire and refusing to fold. Against a high-pressure defense and without key blockers, Shedeur still flashed command traits and subtle decision-making skills that impressed the staff. His demeanor echoed that of a veteran, not a shaken rookie. Now, with a real week of prep ahead, the team believes this next game could be the turning point, not just for Shedeur but for the entire offense. The reaction to Shedeur Sanders' NFL debut came fast, loud, and brutal. A QBR of 3 out of 100. That number alone lit up social media, sports talk shows, and every comment section within reach. Some people were surprised. Some weren't. And a whole lot of people didn't hesitate to write him off altogether. They said he looked overwhelmed, unprepared, and out of place. They questioned why he was in the league in the first place. The conversation turned ugly before the game even ended. But then Kevin Stefanski spoke. In a move that no one saw coming, the Browns head coach didn't dodge questions or pile on. He didn't sugarcoat Shedeur's performance either. He acknowledged it wasn't good. The stats were what they were. The offense didn't move. The film wasn't flattering. But instead of offering excuses, Stefanski offered something more surprising: support. He said Shedeur would be starting in the upcoming game. And just like that, everything changed. Because that kind of public vote of confidence from a head coach, after a performance that bad, is rare. Most rookies would have been sent back to the bench, hidden behind vague development language, maybe even dropped down the depth chart. Stefanski didn't do that. He doubled down. He said, in no uncertain terms, that Shedeur was going to keep playing. That he believed in his potential. That player growth was the priority. And if you looked closer you could start to see why. Because as bad as the numbers were, the context around them matters. A lot. Shedeur didn't get a full week to prepare. He didn't get first-team reps in practice. He was thrown into the game cold, at halftime. That's already a tough ask for any rookie, let alone one who hadn't built timing with his receivers or worked with the starting offensive line. And then there was the opponent, Baltimore's defense. Known for disguising coverages and bringing pressure from every angle. The kind of unit that eats up unprepared quarterbacks for fun. So what did Stefanski see that everyone else missed? That came out in the follow-up. In post-game interviews. In leaked locker room audio. Stefanski didn't rave about the stats, because there weren't any to rave about. What he highlighted instead were the intangibles. Shedeur's poise. His communication. His demeanor in the huddle. The fact that he didn't unravel under pressure. The way he kept his body language positive, stayed locked in, and kept engaging with his teammates, even as everything around him was falling apart. That stuff. It's not easy to teach. And in Stefanski's eyes, those are the traits you can build on. The stuff that separates someone who might make it in the league from someone who's just passing through. Even more interesting was Stefanski's clear acknowledgement of how challenging the situation had been. He pointed out that Shedeur hadn't seen the defensive looks that Baltimore was throwing at him. That he hadn't practiced against those types of coverages. And that losing the left tackle mid-game only made things worse, forcing him to operate behind a backup offensive line. The conditions weren't just difficult. They were borderline impossible for a rookie quarterback seeing his first action. And yet, what the coaching staff came away with wasn't panic, it was curiosity. A sense that if Shedeur could look even remotely composed in those conditions, maybe, just maybe, he'd look a whole lot better with the proper preparation. Which brings us to now. The plan is clear: give Shedeur a full week of first-team practice. Let him build rhythm with his receivers. Let him settle into the game plan, get comfortable with the starters, and actually prepare to be the starter. Not as an emergency fill-in, but as the guy taking the first snap on Sunday. That shift is massive. Because now we get to see what he looks like with a real shot. With timing. With protection. With coaching tailored to him, not to the last guy in the lineup. And Stefanski didn't just say that to boost morale. He said it because he believes that Shedeur might be able to elevate the offense in ways they haven't seen from the current starter all season. That's not just optimism. That's a reflection of how much the coaching staff's perspective has shifted. They're not looking at Shedeur as a backup anymore. They're looking at him as a possibility. Someone who, if given the proper tools, might actually push the team forward. And that belief isn't coming from nowhere. In reviewing the tape, the coaching staff reportedly identified plays where Shedeur flashed the kind of arm talent and decision-making that you look for in a long-term starter. He didn't get many clean pockets. But when he did, there were moments. A few solid reads. A tight throw under pressure. Good footwork. And again, the calm. That's what's driving this second chance. Because right now, the conversation around Shedeur Sanders is no longer about a botched debut. It's about what comes next. Whether this performance was a fluke or a learning moment. Whether the critics were too quick to label him a bust, or whether Stefanski is reaching. And most importantly, whether Shedeur has the potential to not only prove he belongs, but to turn the tide of a narrative that was never entirely fair to begin with. Let's not forget, the backlash wasn't just about his play. It was personal. A lot of people questioned whether Shedeur was only getting attention because of his father. Deion Sanders' shadow looms large, and the accusations of nepotism came fast. Critics said Shedeur was a media creation. Overhyped. Overrated. Not ready for the league. But Stefanski's support has disrupted that narrative. Because when a respected coach pushes back on public opinion and says, "No, we see potential," it forces people to reassess. The conversation has started to shift. Now people are asking if Shedeur just needed a chance. If maybe he's not a fifth-round bust, but a player with raw tools who landed in a tough spot and is now getting the runway he deserves. That shift didn't happen by accident. It happened because Stefanski saw something in the chaos that others didn't. And because Shedeur, even in the middle of that pressure, showed something worth investing in. 2. Now comes the test. Because these next few weeks, they're going to shape Shedeur's career. This isn't just about development anymore. It's about direction. If he steps in with a full week of prep and shows growth, if he keeps his poise, gets the ball out, and executes, he changes everything. The noise dies down. The team buys in. The locker room starts to believe. And from there, it's not hard to see a path where Shedeur doesn't just get another shot, he keeps the job. But if he struggles again even with all the tools in place, the doubts will come back louder. The same critics who hit pause will hit play again. And that second chance will start to feel like the last one. That's what makes this moment so compelling. Because Shedeur has the rare chance to turn a QBR of 3 into a footnote. To take control of the story that's been written about him and flip it. Not with speeches or statements, but with play. And now, the only thing standing between him and that rewrite is, what do you think? Was the initial reaction too harsh? Is Stefanski making a smart move, or taking an unnecessary risk? Can Shedeur make the leap with a full week of prep? Drop a comment. Like this if you're following the ride, share it if you're watching the narrative evolve, and subscribe to stay on top of the next chapter. Because Shedeur Sanders has been handed the pen, and what he writes next might just shock everyone. The thing about the NFL is, it never waits. No matter who you are, no matter what your name is, no matter how strong your college resume might have been, once you step onto that field, you've got a matter of minutes to convince people you belong. And if those minutes go badly, you might not get many more. That's exactly the reality Shedeur Sanders walked into when he was unexpectedly thrown into the game at halftime. No warm-up. No chemistry with the first-team offense. Not even a week of practice reps with the starters. Just a cold, sudden entry into an NFL game against one of the league's most brutal defenses. And what followed wasn't just a rookie struggle, it was an avalanche. The final stat line was ugly. A QBR of 3 out of 100. The kind of number that becomes a headline before the game even ends. And as expected, the internet took off with it. Clips of missed throws were stitched together in TikToks. Tweets called him overrated. Some said he was only there because of his last name. Others said the NFL had just exposed another college star. In the span of a few quarters, Shedeur went from prospect to punchline. But then Kevin Stefanski hit the brakes on that narrative. He didn't just defend Shedeur. He defied the backlash. In front of cameras, microphones, and media, Stefanski didn't dance around the issue. He went all in. He's starting next week, he said. Just like that. And suddenly the story wasn't just about what had already happened. It was about what was coming next. Because in a league that so often eats young quarterbacks alive, what Stefanski did was rare. He offered something that feels almost extinct in modern football: perspective. He looked past the box score, past the memes, past the collective panic. And he said, that's not the whole story. And honestly, he's right. Because when you peel back the layers, Shedur's performance wasn't just bad, it was predictable. How could a rookie quarterback perform under those conditions? No reps with the starters. No time to build rhythm. No experience facing Baltimore's disguised blitz packages and constantly shifting secondary. Then, to top it all off, he lost his starting left tackle, which left him exposed behind a backup offensive line. He was playing from behind against one of the most punishing defenses in football, without a proper chance to prepare. But the coaching staff saw something different. The leaked audio after the game painted a clear picture. Stefanski and his team weren't discouraged. They weren't throwing up their hands or calling for changes. They were encouraged. Not because of the stats, but because of how Shedeur carried himself. His calm under pressure. The way he kept communicating with teammates. The absence of panic even as the pocket collapsed and the pressure mounted. These aren't typical rookie traits. These are the things that separate quarterbacks who survive from quarterbacks who lead. That's the context that got buried under the QBR number. And now, with a full week of preparation, Stefanski wants to see what Shedeur can do with the actual tools he should have had the first time around. Real practice with the first team. Game planning built around his strengths. Reps to find rhythm. A structured environment to work from, not chaos. This isn't just a let's see what happens kind of start. This is a test. Because if Shedeur shows growth this time, if he settles down, makes the right reads, keeps the offense moving, then Stefanski's decision to back him looks visionary. The narrative flips. The story becomes one of development, of potential, of a young quarterback stepping into the moment when given the chance to actually prepare. And make no mistake, that's what's on the table right now. Because the Browns' quarterback situation isn't exactly locked in. It's been inconsistent. There's no franchise name that's holding the spot by force. And when Stefanski says he thinks Shedeur could elevate the team's performance in a way the current starter hasn't, that's not a throwaway comment. That's a shot across the bow. That's a sign that change isn't just possible, it's already in motion. This isn't just about development anymore. It's about competition. And suddenly what looked like a rookie being thrown to the wolves now looks like an open lane to win the job outright, if he can deliver. So the stakes for Shedeur this week? They couldn't be higher. Because if he struggles again, even with all the preparation in the world, it's going to be harder to justify another start. The patience that Stefanski has shown will start to run thin, not just with media but with fans, with players in the locker room, with front office decision makers. Everyone's watching. But if he shows up, if he plays smart, confident football and shows that the first game was just a product of circumstance, then everything changes. That bust label that people were ready to slap on him gets thrown out. Suddenly, the conversation is about potential, trajectory, long-term value. It becomes a question of how high is his ceiling, instead of is he even an NFL guy? And that shift, that's the power of opportunity. That's what Stefanski is betting on. That if you give a young player the proper support, the proper structure, and the space to grow, they'll show you who they really are. Not in chaos, but in control. And maybe that's what's been missing from the Shedeur conversation this whole time, control. Because everything around his name has been noise. From the moment he declared for the draft, the story has been tangled up in his last name, his college legacy, his media presence, his father's shadow. It's been about everything except his play. And now, finally, it's just about football. Now it's about whether or not he can play this game at this level. Whether he can run an offense, move the chains, and lead a team. Whether the traits that Stefanski pointed to, composure, confidence, arm strength, decision-making, can translate when the environment is right. That's what the next chapter is about. Not redemption. Not revenge. Reality. Because it's easy to mock a bad stat line. It's harder to look at the bigger picture and ask why it happened. And now that Shedeur's got the prep time, the reps, and the full attention of the coaching staff, now we'll see what's real. This isn't about silencing critics. It's about answering questions. Can he learn from mistakes? Can he bounce back? Can he perform under pressure when the pressure is fair? Those are the questions Stefanski wants answered. That's why he's giving Shedeur this shot. And if the kid shows up, then this story, the one that started with a QBR of 3, becomes one of the biggest early season turns in recent memory. Not because he lit up the scoreboard, but because he showed what happens when a player is given the right conditions to grow and rises to the moment. That's what this is about now. Growth, execution, proof. What happens next could redefine Shedeur Sanders' career, maybe not forever, but for long enough to matter. Because when a rookie quarterback puts up a QBR of 3 out of 100, the typical path is predictable. He gets benched. The media cycle moves on. The coaching staff quietly shelves him for the foreseeable future. And the player? He becomes a cautionary tale. A warning about the dangers of hype. A remember when? Footnote. But not this time. Kevin Stefanski didn't follow that script. He ripped it up. Instead of pushing Shedeur back to the bench and resetting the depth chart, he looked into the storm and said, "We're going again." He didn't flinch, didn't hedge, didn't backpedal. He said what most coaches wouldn't, that Shedeur Sanders was going to start next week, and that performance wasn't going to define him. That moment turned the narrative upside down. Because now, instead of talking about Shedeur like he's already done, people are asking, what does Stefanski see that we don't? Let's be honest. Coaches don't make public commitments like that unless they've got conviction. The NFL is a results-first league. There's no margin for sentimentality when your job depends on wins. So when a coach like Stefanski, who's known for being measured and methodical, comes out in full support of a rookie with a stat line that looks like a mistake, it means something real is happening behind the scenes. And the deeper you dig, the clearer it becomes. Stefanski's decision wasn't emotional, it was calculated. He knows exactly what Shedeur was up against. No reps with the first-team offense. No time to build timing with receivers. No protection from the blind side once the left tackle went down. And worst of all, he was up against a Ravens defense that thrives on confusion, pressure, and taking advantage of inexperienced quarterbacks. It was a brutal assignment for anyone, let alone someone making his first ever NFL appearance. But Stefanski didn't care about the numbers. He cared about how Shedeur handled the chaos. Not the stats. The body language. The communication. The way he kept engaging with his teammates, didn't flinch under pressure, and didn't let the moment consume him. He saw a player who, despite everything working against him, stayed in it. 2. That's not normal. Rookies usually crumble in those situations. They lose composure. They get flustered. They stop leading. Shedeur didn't. And Stefanski noticed. So did the rest of the coaching staff. That's why this second start isn't just another trial run. It's a referendum. A moment where we all find out whether Stefanski's gut is smarter than the stat sheet. Because this time there are no excuses. Shedeur is getting a full week of prep. Full practice reps with the starting unit. Full time to study the defense. Full game plan input. This isn't a thrown into the fire scenario. This is the real test. Now it's about execution. Can Shedeur take all the things he learned from that first brutal outing and apply them? Can he process the game faster now that he's not flying blind? Can he show poise, timing, command of the offense, when he actually has a fair shot? That's what the team is watching for. And honestly, so is the entire league. Because whether people want to admit it or not, everyone is paying attention now. Stefanski's public defense made sure of that. His endorsement flipped the story from rookie flop to coach sees something. And now the spotlight is back on, but with new rules. Shedeur's not just trying to clean up a messy debut. He's playing for legitimacy. There's a huge difference between being the guy who might be something someday and being the guy who proves he can help right now. If he performs even modestly with confidence and control, then he doesn't just earn another start, he resets his entire narrative. That's the thing people forget. The NFL is built on second chances. When you show something, and right now the Browns are in a position where they need something real. Quarterback play this season has been shaky, uninspired, unsteady. No one has taken full control of the position. And if Shedeur steps in and shows that he can lead the offense with energy, make smart decisions and bring something fresh, then Stefanski has a decision to make, and it's not just about the next game. Because once a team sees a spark, they don't want to go back to a flicker. Kevin Stefanski, this is how it starts. One performance. One game where things click. One moment where a young player doesn't just hold his own, he makes people believe. And if that moment comes this week, then Stefanski isn't just defending a rookie. He's unveiling a new leader. But it cuts both ways. Because if Shedeur struggles again, even with all the prep in the world, then the questions get louder. Was Stefanski too quick to back him? Was this all media noise? Was that first game a preview instead of an exception? That's the razor's edge this second start balance is on. It's not do or die in the long run, but in the short term, it absolutely determines the temperature around Shedeur's future. Another bad outing puts him right back under the weight of those same criticisms. Overhyped, unready, coasting off his last name. And let's not kid ourselves, his last name has always been part of the discussion. Being Deion Sanders' son is both a blessing and a burden. It gets you attention, but it also gets you judged faster. People are quicker to call you a product of privilege. Quicker to label you a media creation. that narrative was already there. And when Shedeur's debut tanked, critics were quick to connect the dots. See, it was all hype. But Stefanski? He pushed back. Hard. Because he's not evaluating Shedeur as a marketing figure. He's evaluating him as a quarterback. And based on everything we know, he genuinely believes that Shedeur has the traits to grow into the role, and possibly to thrive in it. And now, with the opportunity finally matching the expectation, we're going to find out if he was right. Because a fair test is all any player can ask for. A chance to prepare. A chance to show what they can do with structure and support. And Stefanski is giving Shedeur that chance. Not because he has to, but because he believes it's worth it. That belief is powerful. But belief alone doesn't win football games. Now it's on Shedeur to take that belief and turn it into action. To turn it into completions, conversions, confidence. To prove on the field that the trust placed in him isn't a reach, it's a read. And if he does? If he comes out poised, confident, and sharp? Then we might be looking at one of the most surprising quarterback shifts of the season. From not ready to next up in a matter of weeks. From media target to media turnaround. From 3 out of 100 to maybe, just maybe, the beginning of something bigger. Because that's the beauty of this game. It doesn't care where you start, it cares where you go. So what's your take? Was Stefanski's confidence in Shedeur justified? Can a full week of prep change the outcome? Will Shedeur rise to the moment or fold under the weight of it? Shedeur, drop your thoughts in the comments. Like if you're riding the wave with us, share with someone who's watching this story unfold play by play, and subscribe so you don't miss what comes next. Because whatever happens on Sunday, the story of Shedeur Sanders isn't just continuing, it's being rewritten in real time.